A man followed and murdered a woman on a night out and later disposed of her body in an alleyway and woodland. Lorraine Cox, 32, was killed in Exeter on the 1st of September. Azam Mangori, 24, of Dartmouth Road, Stoke-on-Trent, was found guilty of her murder, having previously admitted preventing a lawful burial. He left Mrs. Cox's body for a week in his flat before he panicked and dismembered her, jurors at Exeter Crown Court heard. Speaking for the first time since her death, Mrs. Cox's family described her as the most kind-hearted, loving, generous girl, adding, "She was the heartbeat of our family. We hope and pray that no other woman or family has to go through what our beautiful girl suffered, or that any other family suffers the brutal, distressing experience we have all been through." They added that the trial had been mentally and emotionally exhausting, but thanked people for their help searching for Mrs. Cox last year. Commenting after the verdicts, police said Mangori had committed a deeply disturbing and horrendous crime. He followed Mrs. Cox through the streets and persuaded her to go to his flat above a kebab shop. Parts of her body were later found in an alley next to the flat and in a woodland at Kiers, about 6 miles away. Mangori, an Iraqi Kurd who was denied asylum in December 2018, told the court he had panicked because he feared being deported. He said Mrs. Cox drank spirits and smoked a mystery drug in his room before losing consciousness and dying. The 24-year-old said he had dismembered her body because he did not know how to get rid of it after it had started to decompose. I'm sure the geezers downstairs in the kebab shop could have helped him. Prosecutor Simon Laws QC called Mangori a fluent and determined liar and said he had smothered her with a t-shirt. The court heard after Mrs. Cox was killed, Mangori used a SIM card from her phone to send messages to her family, partner and friends in an attempt to show she was still alive. He also looked at amputation videos in the days before her disappearance, jurors were told. Mangori was caught on camera in shops buying supplies to help him dispose of her body, including bin bags, tape, a suitcase and an air purifier to hide the smell. He also purchased items including a trowel after viewing a website entitled "How to Dig a Grave by Hand." In court, Mangori described the days following her death. Justice Justin Graham said Mangori, who had been remanded in custody, would be sentenced for both offences on 7th of April. After the trial, Detective Sergeant Samantha Weenham of Devon and Cornwall Police said Mangori had tried his hardest to manipulate those closest to her and provide misinformation and misdirection in order to get away with these horrendous crimes. Assistant Chief Constable Jim Carwell called the murder callous and brutal and said the way Mangori exploited Lorraine's vulnerability before murdering her and dismembering her body is deeply disturbing crime. Sentenced to life with a recommendation that he serve 20 years. 20 years. Held for attacking a man after falsely accusing him of murdering Lorraine Cox. Lewis Mearns and Brandon Barrows targeted Naveed Rahimi because he worked at the kebab shop beneath the room where Mrs. Cox was killed. Mangori was a tenant above the kebab shop but had no link to the business or its staff. He was found guilty of the murder of Mrs. Cox in a trial at Exeter in April 2021. 5 men associated with the kebab shop were arrested when the body was found but later released without charge after police realised that Mangori was their killer. Mearns and Marrows, fought staff from the Bodrum kebab shop, were involved in the killing and tracked down chef Mr. Rahimi to his home in Exeter. They ambushed him on his doorstep on 2nd of October 2020 and accused him of cutting up that girl and called him a Turkish terrorist as they battered him about the head and body. They both gave false alibis when arrested by police but were trapped by the locations of their phones, DNA from a drinks can that they threw at Mr. Rahimi and testimony from a passerby. The 2 men were friends of Mrs. Cox and were inflamed by untrue rumours about the killing, Exeter Crown Court heard. Question: where would you rather Azam Mangori be right now? Living at home and free in Iraq, or serving time in England for murdering Lorraine Cox? You decide.